Hello, and welcome to today's webinar from Linköping University. Today we're going to talk about our master program in Biomedical Engineering. I'm Karina Skärberg, working at International Student Recruitment, and I'm here today with a study counselor and a former student, and we will guide you today. First, some practicalities. This webinar will be recorded and will be put on our website afterwards. The first part will concern general information, the curriculum, etc. And the second part is a live Q&A part. So after about 20-25 minutes, we will go live, and who are attending, you will be able to enter your questions in the questions box. So once again, very welcome. So today I have the study counselor with me. Maybe you could start introducing yourself.
Hi, my name is Marcus Larsson. I am a teacher and also head of undergraduate studies at the Department of Biomedical Engineering, and I am heavily involved in the BME program here at LIU.
Okay, lovely. And you are?
Yeah, I'm Alfredo Ordinola. I used to be a master's student back in 2019, then I graduated and now I'm doing a PhD at the Department of Biomedical Engineering.
Lovely. So I thought we'd start with some general information on the program. So Marcus, what would you say? How would this program set us apart from other similar programs?
It's a program that is very cross-disciplinary in some sense, very practical in some sense, but also theoretical. You work very close to medical doctors. But you are in an engineering environment. You are doing programming, you are doing signal processing, image analysis, designing hardware, for instance, in some of the project courses. So it's hands-on, but also theoretical and cross-disciplinary.
Okay, yeah. How is it structured? I think we should have the curriculum here, maybe.
It's a 2-year program, split it into 4 periods for the first year and 4 periods the second year. And the first year is mainly mandatory courses. There are some options to read, for instance, neural networks, which is a very highly appreciated course during the first year in semester 2. And then the second year, there is electable courses throughout that year. We have the, for instance, image processing courses towards visualization, biomedical optics, where you kind of probe the tissue with light and draw conclusions from that, modeling, biomaterials, biomechanics, and so on. And you typically select 2.5 courses per period, and some of these courses span 2 periods.
Okay.
And then we finish up with a master thesis work the last half year.
So if I understand you right, you choose a specialization in the second year?
You choose courses that kind of, you can have different kind of tracks. You can be focused on image processing or more traditional signal processing or informatics, for instance.
And if I was into medical imaging, could you give me some examples of companies where I could work or companies that are involved with the students?
Yeah, we have a company here in Linköping, for instance, Sectra, which is a very big company. But we also have other types of companies, Context Vision and Synthetic MR, and AMRA, for instance.
Are you, as a PhD student, are you working with any companies?
No, personally no. I do a lot of theoretical and research focused, at least in my field. But I would love to eventually, if the project allows at least.
Lovely to hear. So, as a master student, what can you describe a typical week as a student?
Yeah, at least for the first year, because like I said, I came in 2019, so COVID started in the second year. But the first year was pretty much classes in the mornings and a little bit on the afternoon. It was a bit of commuting between different campuses as well. We are located actually in the campus US, which is next to the hospital. So we do have some classes at Valla that we had to commute, so bikes are very important for that. But I would say a typical week would start around 8-10 a.m. We have some lectures. We either meet around with some friends in between, and then We finish up with probably some labs or extra lectures up until 15 or 17, depending the day.
And I've heard that sometimes you have also evening labs, is that right?
Yes, sometimes we do, since we use some of the installations in the hospital. So most of the time slots are open then, but it's definitely manageable.
What would you say about the workload?
I think it's a fair workload. I mean, we need to take into account or consider that this is a full-time master's program, that we do need to put a fair amount of time to it. So I think for what is scheduled and what we are aiming for, it's definitely a fair workload.
Could you add something maybe on the workload?
It's definitely a full week's work, 40 hours. I think it's expected per week at least. It depends very much on your background. If you have very good skills in programming, you don't need to learn that, then you're kind of ahead of the other students. If you're good in math, you also have a bonus there, and physics as well. So it's kind of depending on what you come with in kind of a previous education. Very much dependent, individualized dependent. So
would you say there are some common challenges that you've met a lot of students over the years as study counselors? So what are the common challenges you see among the students?
And it's very dependent on where you come from. Some are really struggling with the programming.
Okay.
Some on the language. It's good to have a fair knowledge in English, written and both written and spoken English. Otherwise, that's kind of, I think we have a good experience with master students coming in here, learning the Swedish system and working. You often work in projects and smaller groups as well, where you kind of work side by side with the Swedish students who have attended a 5-year program, specialized in biomedical engineering from day one. So we mix those classes in student-centered learning groups with problem-based learning, and I think it works very good.
When it comes to challenges, you might have noticed something in the classroom or noticed for yourself over the years. What was hard, do you remember in the beginning?
I would say, at least in the beginning, it's kind of hard to crack into the sort of community that's already built in here, because we are basically joining classes of students that have known each other for at least 3 to 4 years. So it's a bit hard to sort of start a little bit of communication and stuff, but once you are through that wall, it's all good. And I definitely agree with Marcus, and I can have I also teach a little bit now, so the programming part of it, it's definitely a common challenge that we see.
Okay.
So it's really a really good advantage to come with that.
Yeah. So if you have some electives in your last semester of your bachelor's, for example, then you would strongly recommend to focus on programming.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about the thesis project. How early should I start thinking about my thesis?
Should I start with that?
Yeah, you can start.
I think as early as you find something that you really are interested on. At least that's what I did personally. I really enjoyed one course very early on in the master's. And I just remember thinking, okay, I want to do this. And not only right now, but in the long run as well.
Yeah. So that's why you went into research then, I
Precisely,
guess.
Yeah. I met up with the professor in that course. We discussed some topics, and it was smooth sailing from there.
And you, from your perspective, how early?
Second year maybe, but if you're very eager to get into a company after you finish finish your studies, I would say it's good to early on try to contact companies, because many of our students do the master thesis work in collaboration with companies, and that is kind of, you get the first foot into that company in some sense. But we also have a very good experience, especially with master students doing their master thesis work at the department completely, more research oriented.
Is that in particular for those who are considering a future career as a researcher?
Definitely. And in Sweden, it's kind of good to get your knowledgeable within a small area. If you plan on doing academic career, try to find the professor that you really want to work for. See if that professor has.
So you can find if there is a fit.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was basically what you did.
Yeah. I mean, it worked out pretty well for me, but that's why I suggested.
There has to be funding, of course, also.
Yeah,
in order to be able to employ somebody. Yeah, so when it comes then to the entry requirements, we were talking about English. And then not just fulfilling the entry requirements, such as 6.5 on average in IELTS or TOEFL 90, at least 90 out of 120, but also being able to use it in project work, for example. Could you develop a bit further there, maybe?
Yeah, it's definitely important to have a good level of English when you come here. It's a bit harder when there's someone, let's say, lacking in that aspect and you're doing some project group, either you're writing a report together or just discussing in the base groups. It gets quite challenging, but I think those entry requirements are quite fair, and everyone should at least have a good understanding of it.
Do you use problem-based learning in all courses, or are there certain courses where you use it?
Certain courses.
Okay.
For you who don't know what problem-based learning is, it's you kind of get together in a small group, typically 6 to 8 students. You focus on a specific situation, a topic, where you try to tackle that topic with problems that you try to solve. You kind of, after that session, you go home, read a bunch of books, or maybe on the internet today, get back and try to solve those questions that you formulated. It's kind of very intriguing, especially when you can see the students get so enthusiastic about it. They really take part in their own learning process. That's thrilling.
Okay, and also when I look at the general entry requirements in order to enter biomedical engineering, I see that you can have quite a wide variety of engineering bachelor degrees. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is correct. Yeah. And biomedical engineering is very cross-disciplinary. You can kind of be into the medical image part, where you would like to kind of have that kind of background, while if you want to go into more classical, like signal processing or even databases. It's good to have different backgrounds, and especially in these projects that we have, where students come together with different knowledge and try to do so much more together than they can do alone.
So they complement each other.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope, right?
Yeah. I agree.
I had him in a project course.
Yeah,
that was great.
It went pretty well, I would say.
So I noticed that there are some specific requirements as well when it comes to mathematics and physics. So when I say this, I think it's important that those of you considering applying, it's important that you visit the program homepage and see what those courses are. And you have to have those courses in mathematics on your transcript of records. And if you do not, for example, have vector analysis, then you should upload the syllabus for the course where you've studied this. So this concerns in mathematics, linear algebra, statistical theory, vector calculus, and complex functions. And when it comes to physics, where you have to have 10 ECTS, and just so you can get an idea, 30 ECTS is 1 semester of full-time studies in a certain subject. And in physics, you have to have a course in mechanics. So check that on your transcript of records. So I thought we'd go on to student life. Why in the beginning did you choose Linköping University?
Well, first I was checking different programs, what they were about. I really like this one because the first year at least you get a glimpse of different tracks or different types of courses, and I thought that was a great idea. Then I also liked the town, at least from what I could do my research from back home. I liked small towns with open spaces that are quite easy to access. And that's, I think, for me, was a really match.
You said earlier that everybody is biking, and that is totally right. Get a bike. It's about 4 kilometers from town center to Campus Valla, where you are sometimes taking courses. But for you, I guess the main campus is the University Hospital campus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a bit perhaps further than most accommodations, at least for students, but it's nothing with a bike. It's like 10 minutes.
10 minutes by bike. So there's no distance here. Linköping-Norrköping metropolitan area is the 4th largest metropolitan area in Sweden. All in all, about 250,000 inhabitants, and Linköping is 165,000 inhabitants. and we have about 30,000 students. So you see a lot of bikes around here. So, is there something in particular that you wish you'd known before coming here?
Probably just the whole situation about accommodation would be great. Just have a little bit of an introduction on that. I think things have changed since I originally moved here. That and perhaps a bit more information on the different student groups or unions that are around. There are a lot of them. Some of them that are very, very interesting or akin to different people. So having more information.
Have you got any spare time interest that you've done over the years?
Music is one of the main things. That and also just open space, roaming around. And that's pretty much my thing.
Yeah. A lot of applicants actually choose Linköping because we're close to nature. I've heard a lot of students saying that. So how do you feel like living in Linköping?
Oh, it's been great so far. It's a bit different from what I come from. I come from the capital in my country, so there's a lot more cars, a lot more traffic and stuff. I enjoy a more of a quiet place, but also with the chances of hitting the town every now and then. And it's fairly
about
close.
2 hours to Stockholm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super close to other like big central cities, so I've been having a good time here.
Lovely to hear. So is there anything you think that the students who apply should think about before, or anything that you would like to give them before applying?
No, I think it's most important you should follow your heart, of course. And biomedical engineering to me is not only heart like ECG, electrocardiography, but it is also that you kind of get to deal with one of the big problems, one of the big challenges in society, how to treat the growing elderly population and come up with a solution to that. And engineering, biomedical engineering, is part of that solution. And I think that is super thrilling.
Thanks for those words. So we are now coming to an end. For those watching this recording, thank you both for all this information. We are going to stop the recording, and this webinar will be available on our streaming platforms afterwards. So thank you.